your spine. You'll get your ass moving, son, with burning daylight.
Howdy there. I'm Matt McKinley, and we're Burnin Daylight.
In the saddle till the job's done right.
Welcome to Burnin Daylight, the only podcast for the working cowboy. Well, howdy there, Daylight Burners. We got a good one today. Dan Gibbon has been gallivanting around the West Coast, and he stopped in to stay for a couple days, and Dan, we've been having a hell of a good time, just staying up late, drinking whiskey, and talking and solving all the world's problems.
Yeah, solving all the problems, you know.
It's been fun. I'm glad you made it out this way. It's good to meet you in person, and got to see a little bit of the high desert.
Yeah, and, you know, I've learned a little bit about the dairy industry as well.
Yeah,
riding along with you.
Yeah, we had a big old snort. Dan just escaped over the mountain in time to beat the storm, and I think I'm going to move this camera again, maybe. So hold on, we'll be right back. All right, that's a little better, anyways. This is a second in-studio podcast I've ever done, with a guest. So I don't have a great setup for a guest studio, but almost nearly all of my interviews have been remote, so I haven't had to worry about that yet. But I guess one of these days I'm going to have to start designing a better setup for in here. But this also doubles as my gym, so it's it's not bad, but leaves a little bit to be desired is for guests anyways. There we go. I think maybe we got her set up now, but so what'd you think of I guess you want to tell a little story about how we got to this point?
Of how I met you?
So Dan texted me the other day, and he said, I'm going to be out in California, and I'm driving back to West Virginia. Yeah. And,
So I was just finishing a job. You know, I do some consulting work, and it had been a long job, and I decided to take some time off. And then I got the bright idea of buying a 34-year-old vehicle with 250,000 miles on it in, I guess it was Berkeley, California. And I got an idea of just loading it up and camping out and seeing friends and stopping by national parks and drive it home. And through the first check engine light last night, crossing over from, I guess to back up a little bit, I flew out, texted you, and was like, hey, I did this dumb thing.
Yeah.
And I guess I'll be in your neck of the woods. Because I started to, Google. I was like, where do you live? And I was like, oh, it's not that far from where I'm picking up the vehicle. So I flew out, that would have been Wednesday.
Yeah.
Picked up the vehicle Wednesday evening, and then I think Thursday, just in the nick of time.
Yep.
I was kind of like debating it, but then I was like, no, I'm going to go for it.
Yeah.
And I crossed over from Lake Tahoe over here into Smith, Nevada, and beat that big snowstorm.
Yeah, because it really came in and it dumped. I haven't checked to see what the final toll was up on Tahoe, but they were expecting 10 to 12 feet up there, and I bet we had a good 6 inches here, and
it was really wet here.
Yeah,
I mean, if it was a little bit colder up there, I'm sure the snow was much lighter, a little fluffier.
Yeah.
But they said there was 300 people stranded on I-80 or.
That's wild.
Yeah. I guess Highway 80.
Yeah, Interstate 80.
And,
right there, Donner Pass.
When I crossed over there, you could definitely tell that it was starting to get. I
don't know what happened there, so we'll. This thing has been. Glitching like a son of a gun. All right, we're back. StreamYard has been really stupid here lately, and I don't know what it is. Maybe I got to just update my. I got to switch over to Chrome so Google can know even more about me.
Yeah, exactly. They're watching us.
I'm at the point now where like I just don't really care that much anymore because I mean I'm not that I'm not pissed about all the spying, but at this point they've got everything on me. So what is there? There's nothing left to hide anymore. So like all of that stuff was. We went off on some tangents this weekend too, but we're back at Donner Pass. It was like 300 people stranded up there. You said it was just
it early though.
Yeah,
I mean there was snow on the ground and the plows were running, but most of the time you could see pretty good tracks, and it was like honestly a lot of it was like 40 miles an hour tops. 30 miles an hour at times, but I knew. Like, I kept watching the weather condition. I knew I could make it.
Yeah.
And, I'm used to driving the snow. Now, I'm not driving in 10 feet.
Yeah.
Obviously, but, it wasn't too bad. And then dropped down here.
Yeah. By the time it really hit up there, you were been here for a while.
Yeah.
But, they said they had a gust of like 180 mile an hour or some shit like that. It just wild. It was pretty nasty. And, I don't think there's anyone that has resorted to cannibalism up there yet, but that'd be something that I'm sure California would find a way to make it a good thing for social justice or something. Donner, party of 42. Donner, part of 42.
Yeah, well, I don't know. California, there was a lot of, you could tell there's a lot of people who were probably skiers or snowboarders heading up to the mountain. But, I mean, in all fairness, those guys probably are a little bit more attuned to snow and stuff. But
especially the hardcore ones, like, because they drive that shit all the time.
Yeah. But on the way up, I mean, like at almost right there before Tahoe, I did see like some sedans and stuff that were pulled over that you could tell they were having trouble. So.
Yeah, and then so you came out to work with me on Friday, and it was a nasty. Well, Friday was it was just Saturday sucked. I mean, like it's just been kind of.
I'll let you go out there on your own Saturday.
Yeah. So I left for work. Dan had to run into town to get some stuff, and. So I woke up in the morning and it snowed a couple inches, maybe not much, but there was a lot of it rained pretty good, and then snowed on top of that. So you had just like a crusty, frozen snow, and then it came in and dumped several inches of wet, heavy snow. But the wind was blowing pretty hard, so it was like a high plains type of snowstorm on Friday morning. It was just like our Saturday morning, just kind of crunchy, fairly dry snow, and then Dan went out to his vehicle to get something. And he said, "Well, I guess I'll let you tell the story. I wasn't there." This was Sophia.
Oh yeah, Sophia said. I was like, well, I'm gonna go see if I can get in my vehicle and get it warmed up or whatever. And I was headed out the door, and Sophia was like, "We'll write your story if you don't make it back." And I mean, I did have a little video of me out there, and I had my parka on, my hood on, and it looked like, from the video, it looked pretty bad. Now, it wasn't, I mean, was it 25 yards to my vehicle or something, but she was pretty funny. She was being a pure comedian that morning.
She's 9, so it was a pretty solid joke for anyone, but for a 9-year-old, I mean, I'm pretty proud of that. Like that's a really solid joke.
Well, your wife looked at me and she was like, "Where did that come from?" Because I don't think she had ever said anything quite like that. But before that, she had done like a 15-minute comedy skit for me, like with all these jokes just back to back that all intertwined with each other. And I was like, man, she needs her, like, when does she get her Comedy Central special or Netflix special out?
I know, and I'm half tempted to get her started on a podcast, and but also she's too young yet.
just interview her, just be like, well, what's your opinion on this?
I know.
She'll tell you.
She will.
Let you know.
I think she'd have a killer kids podcast if she just did her own show. But like I said, it's as fun as it sounds. Then like if she got popular, and then you got a lot of weirdos on the internet, and it's like, nope, she's too young. Like I'm not gonna go down that rabbit hole. Maybe there may be something that sometime I'll interview her and post it on my feed, but I don't need her having her own I'm not putting my kid on social media, like having their own account or any of that nonsense.
Well, she's the knock joke queen.
Oh, she loves it.
She's got all of them down.
Gus likes to participate, but he doesn't. He needs a little work on his joke crafting. He's the premise. I mean, the setup's not bad, but usually the premise is a little wonky. But he'll get there. I understand the way he thinks, because he thinks a lot like me, and it's very logical, literal type of stuff a lot of times, and I had to really work on wordplay and stuff, because I take stuff way I view things very. It's not that I take things literal, but that's how it first presents in my brain is literal.
Yeah.
So, but they're I don't know. I'm sure proud of my kids.
They're great. I've really enjoyed. They've been quite entertaining.
Yeah,
they've been really helpful too. I mean, they're really well behaved.
Yeah,
kids.
we're fairly strict with them, but I don't have to get on them too much like that. I really don't. They get to bickering back and forth, but I mean, siblings.
But you give them freedom where they should have freedom is the good thing, and it shows.
Yeah.
They've got creative minds.
Yeah. Well, we talk to them like people instead of babies. We talk to them like people. Like once they started talking, it's like, all right, well, let's have a conversation. And I don't know. It seems like it's working out pretty good.
She said something else that was really funny. I don't know if you were around, but I think Rebecca was there. And I said something about going to Garnerville or something. She said something about my California plates, because I've got California plates on the Toyota Land Cruiser, and so it's just shameful for me being from West Virginia, because West Virginians are like, oh, California. But anyhow, I think I said something about my California plates and going to Garnerville, and she was like, yeah, Poppy says we don't want to be like Garnerville and all those California people. I mean, I forget exactly what she said, but the delivery was so great. And once again, Rebecca was like, where did you get this? Where did you pick this up from?
Yeah,
just bashing Californians already.
Well, they hang out with my father-in-law during the day, and he's a funny sucker. Like he's really funny, and he's always just sarcastic, quick, and always gets the last word too. You don't when you're talking shit back and forth with each other. He always gets the last one in, and so they have no choice but to be funny, honestly.
Well, I mean, this is my first time in Nevada, so it's and really my first time in California much.
Yeah.
I mean, I've flown through California some, but it's pretty amazing. I can see why it's. Like California, driving through California up from San Francisco up over the mountains to Tahoe, man, I can see why people put up with a bunch of BS in California and live there, because it's pretty beautiful.
It's
pretty
gorgeous,
nice.
and
it's pretty awesome.
And it's the best cow country in the world too. I mean, it is. If you haven't been to California, I know how the politics are. I get it. But it's kind of the same way with New York City. You got to go to New York City once in your life, and you got to go see just how goddamn beautiful California is.
Yeah.
It's the most beautiful place on earth, just ran by incredibly stupid people.
Yeah. Now that said, my short time in California, I was already annoyed with several things, like gas pumps that you have to stand there and hold.
Yeah.
And you can't just let it automatically.
Oh, it
fill
doesn't
up.
have the little.
No. It was so annoying. None of them had it in San Francisco.
No shit.
And then also, I went into the convenience store to get 2 bottles of water and a bag of jerky, and it was $50.
Oh yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's insane.
It was so expensive.
The fuel prices are. I was
I
telling.
didn't look.
Yeah.
I just didn't even look. I don't know what it was. I'm not even gonna look at how much
Yeah.
it's gonna cost to fill this thing up.
Yeah, because we were talking, and I was like, if you can, fill up in Nevada, and he's like, this thing's gonna get like 12 mile a gallon. I'm like, well, we'll pray for you.
It was bad. I'm pretty sure I dropped just 3 digits worth of fuel in there, just
In a small gas tank, yeah.
not even that big, 20 gallons maybe.
Yeah, it's insane. We were going up to Bridgeport, California on just a Sunday cruise one time, and we needed to get fuel, and I was like, well, I'll just get fuel in Bridgeport, and my wife's like, I don't think you want to do that, because we were gonna, but otherwise we were gonna have to drive into Yerington, and then back up to Bridgeport, and so I was like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to. So I was like, I'll get some fuel up there, and yeah, I think on the Nevada side it was 2 something a gallon. It was this was when Trump was still president, so gas prices were pretty low, and it was, we'll call it 250 somewhere in there, and it was like almost $5 in California. It was stupid. I mean,
I don't think gas prices change in California. They just stay high.
Yeah.
Oil could be like $20 a barrel.
Yeah.
And California would be like $8.
Yeah.
It
Well, I
doesn't
mean,
matter.
they hit 10.
Economics don't impact California somehow.
They hit $10 a gallon plus when we were at like 9% inflation.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It was stupid.
I couldn't
And
imagine. I couldn't imagine filling up like a big diesel heavy duty truck.
just like cry a little bit as it's.
When it was high, filling up a 50-gallon tank is just like that's like $500 fare.
Yeah,
It's crazy.
it was
It's
stupid.
ridiculous.
It was. It made me really glad that I had company pickup,
Yeah.
and then we just didn't. We took a couple trips, and every time we fueled up, it was like, blah, And the good thing is on that rig we got a big tank on it, and it gets pretty decent mileage, so we can run almost 500 miles before we gotta fuel up again. So that helps. But even so, filling that bitch back up was.
Your Tahoe?
Yeah.
That thing.
It's because it's got like a 28 or something gallon tank, and yeah, you're just like watching. Just, fuck this. I'm gonna have to go easy on the beer from here on out. We got to get home at some point.
Yeah.
Like I think because we took it up to Chalice, Idaho for Braun Brothers reunion, and yeah, it was like the year before when we went up. I had crazy spending money, and then then on the way back or on the next year when the inflation was damn high, we were just like, ooh man, we're gonna have to plan we had to reconfigure the budget quite a bit. It was stupid how expensive everything was, but that fuel was a killer. Yeah, it's but anyways, what'd you think of Nevada so far?
Well, I can certainly see why you live here.
Yeah.
I mean, like you're surrounded by a couple different mountain ranges.
Yeah.
And especially with the snow, it's like absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
I'm kind of jealous. Probably the thing I'm jealous of is you have beautiful mountains, but then you have the valley and it's flat. And in West Virginia, we just don't have any of that.
Yeah, you just got all mountain.
So like, the one thing I was telling you about that I don't understand is in West Virginia, everyone puts up round bales.
Yeah.
And of course, it's mountainous everywhere. No one has any flat meadows where they put up hay. And, every year we usually put a couple through a fence.
Yeah.
One year I put one through 3 fences.
Oh shit.
But the fence actually, we have the timeless fence, so it like flopped down and then popped right back up, and I only had a couple steeples pop.
Nice.
But, here it's just so flat, but you all put up the big squares.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why don't we not do that in West Virginia? And then you look at how big those balers are, and it's like, okay, we would roll those in West Virginia.
Yeah.
That's why we do these little squatty round bales. But So it's kind of like, man, I wish we had a little bit more flat land with the mountains.
Yeah.
Which is really nice. So that aspect of it, it's always impresses me when there's like giant mountains and then it's like dead flat valleys.
Yeah. That is one of the cool things about it, because Nevada has the most mountain ranges of any state in the country, but it's crazy how drastically different the terrain is, or the vegetation once you get away from a river, because it goes from like lush green, grass, just like pastures and hay fields, and then you just, as soon as you get away from the river, it's just nothing but sagebrush.
Yeah.
I'm just mile after mile of sagebrush.
Like for me, I know it's like winter.
Yeah.
We just had quite a bit of rain and snow, but it's still, the one thing that just strikes me about it is it looks dry.
Yeah.
For me, like it just is super dry.
Mm-hmm.
Because in West Virginia, you just got grass everywhere.
Yeah.
Or forest everywhere.
Yeah, it's it's pretty tough to scratch out a living out on that desert, man. Those your old cows got to work. I mean, they got to travel. They got to go hunt some feed, and they always look pretty good though. Like it's crazy. I don't know what
they're eating.
I don't
That's
know.
What I wonder, because when I look around, I'm like, what are they eating?
But like, I don't know. All the cows because we got a neighbor that. Just down the road from the feedlot, they've got a pasture right there on the river, and that's where their cows come into water. And so they'll come in the morning, and then they're just headed back out to the desert, and then you'll see them straggling in the evening to get a drink, and they just look like normal cows, like they're not fat, not ganned up or anything. They're just cruising, and they look good, and it's like I have no idea what they're eating, but they're eating something.
Yeah,
it's wild. It's funny, those ruminant animals. I mean, that's just kind of what they do all day. They just got to eat all day to keep maintaining that stuff.
I think the other funny thing though that struck me about Nevada is, what was that restaurant we went into?
The Heyday,
or where we had the what was it, the New York Strip?
Yeah, it was a Heyday.
You've got gambling right there at the bar.
Yeah.
And then you go into a convenience store, you can buy any hard liquor, and they've got like slot machines.
Yeah.
And of course, you just don't have that in West Virginia. You can buy beer in a convenience store. Sometimes you can buy liquor, but you certainly can't gamble.
Yeah.
On top of that.
Yeah, and then I guess you didn't go by any of the whorehouses, but like especially like Lyon County, because so it's legal by county in Nevada. Like the whole, like Las Vegas proper is prostitution is not legal, but Clark County it is, and so we're here in Lyon County, and Lyon County's it's legal too, and they actually tried to get rid of it a couple years ago. I think it was in the 2022 election, maybe. They were gonna, I forget what the statute was, but it was essentially gonna shut down the brothels, and it got voted down by like 75-25, something like that.
That was pretty wild. I wonder, is Nevada the only state that allows it?
I think so. Up until like I want to say like the 1920s, it was illegal in quite a few states. But yeah, Nevada just never give it up. I don't know quite the story behind that, but yeah, they're so in like Lyon County, that's where there's a whole bunch, or a handful of them, but they're all in like the same place. Like I kind of dig how Nevada does it, and like they're there. Like they don't advertise really, but they're there, and if you live in town, you probably don't want to be seen with your pickup outside the whorehouse if you got a wife at home.
Yeah.
And but they're all in the same, like in Elko, they have their little red light district, and it's just not a big deal, Like I'm sure they get plenty of business, but like it's just kind of not spoken about much.
Yeah, I mean, I've been to Cologne, Germany.
Mm-hmm.
They have a big red light district there.
Yeah.
and then of course the Netherlands do as well. But never really. The Europeans are just that's just their thing. But I mean you don't. I totally until you mentioned it to me the other day. I knew about it, but I hadn't thought about it forever.
Yeah.
And I had completely forgot that it was even legal here.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of those things. It's there, but like you don't notice it. Like it always makes me chuckle when I drive by one of them. Like I'm just like, oh yeah, that's a thing here.
Is the parking lot packed or what?
Or is it like not steady? Usually.
Usually it's empty.
Yeah. I like, of course, every time I'm in Elko, it's for a Cowboy poetry gathering. So I'm sure there's more vehicles there on that weekend than there normally is. But I'm guessing a lot of out of state plates that show up on that weekend. But yeah, I don't know. I've always joked with my wife about I wanted to go in and have a conversation about socioeconomics with one of the working girls, and I don't think she believes me still.
Go in there and be like, just do lonesome dub lines.
Yeah.
Only, and be like, well, what is it? I'll split the deck for it or something, a poke.
Yeah.
And just go in there and only do like Gus lines on all of them.
Well, and then like when my dad was out here, I thought it'd be cool as hell just to go sit down at the bar in one of the whorehouses and drink a beer with my old man. And but it was the COVID year, so they were shut down, and I wonder, she was like the highest earning working girl in Nevada. She was making like upwards of $1 million a year.
Dang.
And I don't know if it was quantity or if it was or if the prices were elevated. I'm sure she had higher prices.
A little bit of both, maybe.
Probably. But she sued the state for like discrimination laws because they were forced to shut down, but they couldn't file for unemployment and all sorts of.
Wonder how that turned out.
Yeah,
Did she win or?
I don't know. I was just thinking. I was like, I meant to follow that because I just thought it was an interesting deal, and I don't know how it turned out. So I might have to. I could look it up, but then I'd be like reaching over your leg, and it's a whole thing. But we'll look that up after the podcast and see how it turned out. Yeah, Nevada's it's a wild place. I guess back in the 60s, 70s, and even somewhat into the 80s. I mean, like rural Nevada was pretty outlaw too. I mean, there was a lot of real unsavory type of characters working on some of these big ranches, and like they're probably, from what I've gathered on a lot of the guys that worked around then, is like it's not so much that they were a bunch of criminals. It's just like they were really good on a ranch and had a little too much fun when they went to town, and so it was good for them it was probably good that they only went to town a couple times a year.
Yeah.
And but yeah, it's a different place, but I really like rural Nevada. It's pretty cool.
I can see why.
Yeah.
I could have I could spend quite a bit more time out here.
Yeah.
Enjoy every bit of it.
Yeah, and I'd like to spend some more time in like the central part of the state, like Austin, and then on the eastern, like the east central side, like Ely and Austin. Like there's just what did Scott Hall say they used to call Nevada? It was like the big outside or something like that. And it just once you get out of a town, like it's a long way to another town, and it's just a lot of open space. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah, hopefully I've got enough coolant to get from town to
No
town.
shit. Yeah.
As I flew, I did throw that check engine light yesterday coming up over the pass from, Carson City back to, and it was snowing pretty hard, and I had it running pretty hard, and that check engine light came on, and then we found out my coolant was all gone. So we definitely have a leak in the radiator. We diagnosed that.
But you never, like your temperature never went up.
Well, it was pretty cold outside.
That's true.
That probably helped.
Yeah. But yeah, when you
no temp didn't go high or anything. It was like right in the middle.
Yeah.
So now I've got like 3 gallons on my jerry can holder.
Nice.
On the cruiser. So hopefully maybe I'll find a radiator place to get that leak.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a metal one. I figure they could probably fix it somehow. Hopefully
Yeah,
it won't
they
be too hard.
solder it.
Day
I'd
job or
imagine.
something.
I think that's my dad used to take some radiators up to Lamar, Colorado to have them. There was that was like the closest radiator shop for us, and there was an older guy that I guess they solder them. 'Cause that's those old style radiators are all copper.
I mean, what could possibly go wrong with a 34-year-old?
Yeah, exactly.
Mile vehicle.
I mean, nothing could happen. You'd think.
It's gonna be perfect.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there'll be some little things. Hopefully nothing major.
Yeah.
Blow a gasket or something. Then I'll be like, Matt, can I park the vehicle here for a while? I'm gonna go back and get my flatbed and my heavy duty truck and drive out here and load it up and drive it back or something.
Might as well
just ship it.
Add to the
at that point.
Add to the collection that we got out here. So it's it's been fun. I've really enjoyed I'm just a sucker for good conversation and stories, and like hearing about your visits to Germany and Europe and whatnot, and then talking politics, talking religion, all the stuff you're not supposed to talk about. But I'm a sucker for all of it.
Oh yeah. Well, I've enjoyed. I think, gosh, we probably talked 10 hours.
Oh yeah.
More about all that stuff, and it's you have some interesting points that I don't always think about.
Yeah.
Just coming from a little bit different perspective. And then I have a tendency to be biased to come from the financial end, but they always intersect,
Yeah. Well, the finance stuff that's why Ron Paul's his main thing was always in the Fed, or at least audit the Fed, because the Federal Reserve setting rates, controlling the money supply, that's what runs, that's what allows all of the fuckery, if you will, to continue. That's how they finance wars, and it's funny just like how tied in big businesses with the big banks, and the big banks are directly affected.
The goal is you talk a lot about BlackRock, and they have they lobbied and were able to get what they call over the counter, so they get that discount rate from the Fed, so that allows their capital cost to be cheaper, so they can do some of these acquisitions that they've been doing. But and that allows them to basically get money on the cheap, if you will. So the Fed, though, learning more about the Federal Reserve, and I'm not an expert on it, but I do know a fair amount about it. But watching that is really interesting, particularly now, because I don't think Jerome Powell, he's a different character than what you've traditionally had as a Fed chair, and he's at odds with really the Biden administration, the Trump administration, and the U.S. Treasury right now.
Yeah.
And he's an interesting character to talk about. So we were talking a little bit about him, which is...
And so that was the one that Trump appointed, right?
Yeah, I think Trump appointed him, and then he had to be reconfirmed for a second term.
I think so.
With Biden. And then immediately once he was reconfirmed, that's when he jacked rates up.
Yeah.
So he had to kind of play along with Biden and play ball, and then immediately once he was confirmed and he was good, he's now good through 2026, I think. So now he can do what he wants to do for a while. And what he wanted to do was jack interest rates up because he knew that would help drain some of this easy money on programs that should never even be funded to begin with.
Yeah.
And you saw the Silicon Valley Bank go up. Sam Bankman-Fried, they were levered up, and then with the interest rates, they had margin calls, and that was ultimately
that's what led to his
some of the factors that led to his downfall.
Yeah.
And I believe that was a Ponzi scheme, running money through basically Ukraine back to through the Bitcoin, and then back, and then he was donating. Well, Sam Bankman-Fried was donating a ton of money. He donated $60 million to the Biden administration. So I think it was a way to wash money.
Yeah.
And then, I think Jerome Powell knew about it, and he wanted to drain some of this swampiness activity. And the way you do that is raise interest rates, because when money costs when it costs more for money, crappy or organizations that aren't really legit can't handle the increase in capital cost.
Yeah.
Got to have an ROI, a real one.
Yeah. And the funny thing about all that whole Sam Bankman-Fried is, he got convicted.
He was yeah. I think he's basically a life.
Yeah.
But he also he's the fall guy.
Yeah.
That's what he is.
But they did throw him a bone somewhat. They dropped all the campaign finance charges.
Yeah, that was true. But is that surprising? I mean,
No.
Look, it was a way to fund the DNC and controlled opposition. That's all what he was.
And he threw a little bit of money at the Republicans too, but like the vast majority of it went to the Democrat Party.
But what Republicans? You
Yeah,
could make
exactly.
an argument that the Republicans he threw money to were just basically DNCers.
Yeah, I
They
think
just have
so.
an R at the end of the name.
I think so. But yeah, it's funny that all the charges that could implicate so many politicians just mysteriously went away.
Yeah. It's funny how that works.
Yeah, it's weird. Really weird how that works. Yeah, so this was some of the topics we were diving into. But you were saying how you think Powell's kind of making a play to essentially pull cut the chains the shackles that from the European banking system, essentially.
So I should say this. This is not a lot of this theory draws upon what I've listened to from some other individuals, but I think it actually checks out, and it makes sense to me, being kind of a financial guy as well. And that is, and I should, it's Tom Luongo who kind of, I think, spearheaded this originally on it was Zero Hedge.
Oh, okay.
Talk about finance and things on Zero
Yeah,
Hedge.
Zero Hedge is a good publication.
But he has his own, I think it's like tomluongo.me or something like that. But he's a really good listen when it comes to macroeconomics and geopolitics from the finance money world.
Yeah.
And he kind of said, he's the one that when he explained what Jerome Powell was doing to me, or for me, he explained it for me. I was like, okay, this actually seems to really check out, because Jerome Powell, he didn't come from academia or anything. He came from private equity, and so he's a Wall Street guy. Look, none of us really care much for Wall Street, but he seems to be different in the fact that he does actually want to see industrialization of America. He's not trying to deindustrialize it. And, Europe is in a tough situation.
Yeah, they're kind of fucked right now.
And like I was telling you, I've been over to Germany several times since 2010 or 2009 when I was over there first. And this last summer, so summer of 2023 when I was over there, things are falling apart.
Yeah.
Like Deutsche Bahn, you could set your watch to. I mean, if they were a minute late, they would make up a minute on the next station.
Yeah.
It was just that good. The high-speed rail, I never had a train break down on me.
Yeah.
And when I was over there this summer, you could barely get from point A to point B via the train system. The Deutsche Bahn was terrible. They had gotten rid of some of the diesel. The local trains were still diesel trains. And they got rid of those, and they replaced them with hydrogen trains, which all broke down or failed. And now you had these towns of 100,000 people that relied on that local rail to get into Frankfurt, Germany, and now they can't. And they are pissed. And so Germany, anyhow, to sum it up, Europe's in tough, the United States maybe isn't in the best times, but Europe, from my eye, seems to be in a lot worse shape.
Yeah.
And I think what Jerome Powell has really tried to focus on, and kind of there's a lot to lay out there, but by raising interest rates, he wants to get to a point where this kind of garbage, if you will, like the Silicon Valley banks, some of these projects that wouldn't be feasible unless it was basically zero interest, get drained and destroyed. And so by raising interest rates, it's counterintuitive, but it's kind of a good thing. Money should never have been as cheap as it was for as long as it was. But by doing that, And if you get to a point where you have actual positive real interest rates, so that meaning inflation is less than what you're earning on interest rates, it'll attract capital and investment from foreign nations. And by doing that, and then also it kind of limits what they call the euro dollar. So I think there's some good things that he's doing that will actually help the United States, even though technically now when you and I go out to get something financed, we're paying more, but we should be paying more. You know, we need to actually think twice about, you know, do we need to, is this, if we finance this at this rate, are we going to get an ROI? A real ROI, is it really worth the investment? Because interest rates have been so cheap for so long, they just can't be that low.
Well, I've talked about it quite a bit, and I'm not a finance guy, but I'm a Ron Paul guy, and his he is always focused on the Federal Reserve, and so I know enough about that. And then I look back, I'm a student of history. I sometimes kick myself for not being a history major, but it was always an option, but I was like, I don't want to be a history teacher, so. But if you look back in the 80s, you know, interest rates on a mortgage were like 18-20%, and that's what it took to get the stagflation under control of the
Paul
70s.
Volcker raised it. Now, they weren't that high for very long, in all fairness. I think they were, you know, maybe in the 18% mark for, if you look back, maybe like 6 months a year. And then they were more at the 7% range. But, you know, this cheap money has caused a lot of what we would call in Austrian economics malinvestment. And the malinvestment is what? It's like the Silicon Valley banks, it's the Sam Bankman-Frieds, it's, you know, garbage investments.
It leads to speculation, which is that's what led to Black Friday or Black Tuesday, Black Monday, whatever, the stock market crash that led to the Great Depression. You know, it was a lot of that was because of cheap money, and which led to speculation in the stock market, and you saw it all around during COVID. You know, you had the GameStop deal, which those guys actually, I mean, even though GameStop was not a good stock, but like their plan of attack was sound. Like there was, and some of these big hedge funds lost billions of dollars, and but you're like, at the same day, you're like, it's all speculation. Like there's a few guys that knew what they were doing, but for the most part, it was just your random average guy dipping their toe into the stock market. Which, I mean, you kind of got to know what you're doing there. It's like sports gambling. You know, it's the same damn concept. But I'd rather gamble on sports because I know sports. I don't know the stock market very well.
Yeah, well, I think really with Jerome Powell, a lot of it is with, you know, just the yield on the bonds, and, you know, that's really what he's looking at. I don't think he worries too much about the stock market, like with his decisions, but I mean, it's definitely part of his calculation, calculus. But, you know, the stock market, and what was interesting that some people are making the argument about, I don't really have a dog in the fight here, but that the stock market has, and even the bond market to an extent, expects him to cut rates later this year. Well, he hasn't cut yet, and he hasn't really indicated that, and we're starting to see some of these expectations via the pricing of bonds and stocks, you know, go away because it doesn't look like, and he may cut a little bit, but he's not cutting down to like the zero bound of 0% again, I don't think. And so it's interesting to see what pans out, because he doesn't get along with Janet Yellen, who's at the Treasury. And so there's definitely, like, I guess what interests me, right, is there's these different factions, and what you can call them, like, the Euro trash globalists or whatever, but Jerome Powell is not in that group. He's not in the World Economic Forum group. He's not in these, like, European commie globalist groups. He's different. He may still be, he's still a Wall Street bankster. Okay, don't get me wrong. But he's at least the United States Wall Street bankster, and he seems to have the United States interests more aligned than, say, the Janet Yellens of the
Yeah,
world.
interesting. That it's funny how a lot of this stuff just keeps tying back to Ukraine. Like, I always wonder, it's like, why Ukraine? I mean, I get what they're trying to destabilize Russia. They're eventually they're gonna make I think if they can draw this thing out long enough and make the war unpopular in Russia, they'll make a play at ousting Putin somehow. Which is stupid, because the guy that's gonna come to power after Putin is gonna be way more hawkish than Putin is.
And you want the enemy you know versus the enemy you don't know.
Right.
And I think Putin, he's got his, whatever you think of him, he's kind of got his own, we kind of have a handle on how he acts.
Mm-hmm.
We've got a history to understand how, he might, do things. But who knows who would be after him.
Yeah.
And even with the Ukraine deal, it blows my mind still at why Germany, and going back to Germany, why on earth is Germany still sending some weapons over to Ukraine? Why does Germany want to support Ukraine? Because they are getting screwed in this whole deal.
Mm-hmm.
They're economically, maybe they don't care. Maybe the elites of Germany and their politicians don't care. But when I was over there, they pushed for this green initiative,
mm-hmm.
and they don't want to have coal get their energy from dirty sources,
quote,
or even nuclear.
Yeah, they were shutting down nuclear
so they
plants
have a
too.
ton of turbines and solar over there, but their energy cost is 28 cents a kilowatt, or 29 cents. It's 28 or 29 cents a kilowatt.
Mm-hmm.
Now, for perspective, France's, who's invested a lot in nuclear, was like at 14 cents.
Yeah.
I think the United States is at like 9 to 11 cents. So just when you think of Germany and all the manufacturing they're doing, you're not competitive when your energy cost is twice as much as the country that your neighbor. And there's a lot of deindustrialization that's occurring in Germany.
And then the Nord Stream blew up too.
Yeah. Well, that was crazy. I told you I was on the train.
Yeah.
In Germany. I was on the Deutsche Bahn train that broke down. And I was on the phone with a friend of mine who was an American who was familiar with Germany and been there quite a bit. And I was like, man, Deutsche Bahn's like, hey, Amtrak, hold my beer, because it's like trying to be as crappy as Amtrak.
Yeah.
It was honestly worse when I was there than Amtrak. Amtrak would get you there. It was going to be really slow. Deutsche Bahn couldn't even get me there.
Jeez.
So I was saying this on the phone, and then I ended up striking up a conversation with, he was a German neurosurgeon that was on the train with me. And he said, yeah, the train system has fallen apart. They don't have enough money. They don't have enough labor. Everything's costing more, and the budget's blown for the train system, and it's just not really functioning as how it should. And then we, went on to talk a little bit about, some other things, and he was complaining about just, the deindustrialization, kind of bit of that there's a bit of a depression there going on, maybe at least whatever you want to call it, recession, depression. Yeah. But, I brought up the fact, I was like, well, your energy costs are higher, and I'm sure the United States blowing up Nord Stream didn't help. And he was like, what? And he was like, the United States didn't blow it up. I was like, what are you talking about? And he's like, what are you talking about? I was like, well, Seymour Hersh, who's a pretty well-known journalist, pretty much laid out that how the United States blew up Nord Stream. And he had never, this had never even crossed, and this guy seemed like an informed individual about politics, never even crossed this guy's desk or mind. And when I spoke to my other German friends and brought up, they're like, no, the United States didn't do this. I'm like, I'm from the United States, and I think we did it.
I'm pretty convinced that we did it, because especially if you read the Seymour Hersh story about it, because he goes into detail about, and even Putin talked about it on that Tucker Carlson interview, and he's like, you got to dive all the way to the bottom of the Baltic Sea, which is 300-400 feet or something like that, or I don't know how deep it is, but deep.
Yeah.
And and so he talks about, he's like, it's not who has the motive, because there's a lot of people that have a motive, but who also has the motive but also has the capability. And there's not many people that can do that.
Yeah.
And the story that, the official story is that it was Ukrainian special forces that rented this yacht or whatever. And you're like, well, did the yacht have a decompression chamber? Because they kind of need a decompression chamber after diving 400 feet,
Yeah.
It's like, if you read any of the spy novels, especially like the good spy novels, a lot of them will talk about, like, Clive Cussler's a good example. He talks about that because you get the bends if you come up too fast, and then even when you do reach surface, you have to decompress. Like, you have to go in a decompression chamber and, like, slowly work the air bubbles out of your bloodstream.
Yeah, especially that deep. That's like, I don't know how deep a diver can go. I mean, I'm not a diver, don't know anything, but I know that it's not that, like, far before you start to have to, like, have.
Yeah, and like, you can't just come straight to the surface. You have to go in stages, and like, because it's all decompression, from what I remember.
Guess what? The United States has a special training school just for that.
Yeah,
we
in
have
Florida.
a group of people that do nothing but specialize in deep dives.
Yep.
And like sabotage like that.
Right.
So, it's funny that we happen to have this special school down in Florida, and then we did joint operations or something there. Maybe a week or two, or maybe a month before it blew up. So it was a time charge.
Yeah.
And then they just, or signal charge, probably timed, I don't know, whatever.
Yeah, I think it was like a radio transmitted deal.
Which part of me is like, damn, the United States is so awesome, we can do that.
I know. It's also,
and then the other side of me is like, this is so silly.
Yeah.
I wish we had never blown up that Nord Stream pipeline.
Yeah.
But in a weird way, you got to wonder, like, okay, well, now we're selling that liquefied natural gas to Europe. We're getting that marketing going, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, and that's another, like, Biden put a pause to, or was going to cancel. I think he has canceled a bunch of the contracts, and you're like, do you want us to suffer? Are you just trying to make the American people suffer? Like, good God, man. I don't understand a lot of it. It just, like, because a lot of it just doesn't compute.
Well, I think that's the thing. It's controlled destruction or controlled sabotage of the United States. And, when we kept interest rates so low, it was like trying to destroy the money of the United States. They're trying to destroy the currency. Now, Jerome Powell has tried to get it back in check. And, who does that hurt? Well, it hurts Europe.
Yeah.
Because they just don't have a good currency. I think they've got more debt problems than us.
Oh, yeah.
They also don't have any resources, natural resources. They don't produce their own oil. They don't have, like, a ton of, like, timber and forestry or natural gas, things like that. They rely on other countries for that, and I think that makes them in a weaker position.
That was the biggest reason that Hitler wanted to push east. He wanted Ukraine for the wheat. Because one of the big reasons Germany lost World War I is because they got starved out. They could not produce enough food to support the war effort, and that was, like, Hitler was fanatic about not being starved out again, and so Lebensraum, and we need some living space, and that living space was Ukraine.
Yeah.
It
just shows you how bad you said this, we're bad imperialists because we fight these wars for other countries seemingly, and we get not a whole lot out of it.
Right.
And
like we get some more control, but like the Brits did it right. They went in, they plundered, they extracted all those natural resources, and the king and queen got wealthy, and so did the population with them. It was all on the backs of little brown people somewhere far away.
Yeah, they had quite East Indie company and all that stuff.
Which, and I don't even fault them for it, because like that was the name of the game back then. It's still the name of the game. It's just a little different flavor.
So we're going to invade Canada.
Yes.
And we're going to
no Mexicans, be warned.
We're going to invade Canada and have all that timber, minerals, natural resources.
Maple syrup.
Maple syrup.
Yeah.
We're going to run cars on maple syrup.
Shit, yeah.
And then oust Justin Trudeau.
Yeah.
And you know what? We'll let France have Quebec. We don't want them.
You can, exactly. And I think the rest of Canada, I think rest of the Canada would support that too. Yeah. Or at least all the ones I've talked to, they're like Tuffy Gamble. He's from Manitoba, I believe. But he's like, because I mentioned something about the French Canadians. He's like, fuck it, you can have those greasy fucks. Nobody likes them.
I've only been to Quebec once, but I did find them to be a little bit snobbish.
Yeah.
It was hilarious because, I was a lot younger then, but we went on this tour about, one of the battles up there for Quebec between the French and the British. Go figure. They're always fighting. And there was an English tour and then a French tour,
Yeah.
Of course. And, when you were like, like the English tour, the people were just kind of snooty about it. But there was a bunch of Canadians that were like, yeah, we need the English tour. We don't speak any French anyhow. So, they were, all the Canadians from outside of Quebec were having to take the English tour. But, it's a really beautiful place. Beautiful old town and city, and like, by all accounts, worth visiting. It's like Europe in North America.
Yeah.
Basically. But some of the people were kind of snooty, I thought.
I've never been up to Canada. I was close. Like I was telling you, there was a border crossing just outside of Havre, Montana, and I was, the ranch I worked at was like, it was like 80 miles southwest of there, and the ranch I was at, like as the crow flies, it was only like 60 miles to the Canadian border, so I probably could have went up there and just ran across, but it was pretty goddamn cold, so I wasn't going to do that.
I had a buddy in college, and he was dating this girl from, where is it at? Like up around Niagara Falls was where she was from.
Mm-hmm.
Or where she was from, Buffalo. That was it. And somehow they drove into Canada, and he just didn't think anything of it. He didn't have a passport. Like, I'm not sure he owned a passport.
Huh.
And, of course, she didn't think to ask him. She just assumed. And so then when they tried to come back in, he didn't have a passport. And so Canada officially had to release him back to the United States. And he was, like, detained for, like, a day.
Oh, jeez.
And he was, like, released back to the United States. And he has, like, this official paperwork of the Canadian government and the U.S. government releasing him. He hung it up in our dorm room. But it was funny because I was like, dude, you had to be released back from Canada.
He needed that Bible on the dash, man.
Yeah, exactly. That's the best thing. If we invade Canada, we get Corblund.
Hell yeah.
He's ours.
Hell yeah. And I like that. I'm my best friend, Corblund. I haven't said that in a while, but
best friend, Corblund.
I'm a little
bit jealous that you can say that.
I wish it was true, but I just started saying it after I had him on the podcast, but he really is a cool guy. I think I know he's a Canadian, but I consider Corb a national treasure of some sort.
Well, his music's awesome, and like I was telling you, I just go down rabbit holes when I listen to some of his songs. Like Horse Soldier?
Horse Soldier, Horse Soldier, and like that whole. It's such a nerdy, like niche album, but the people that get it are like, fuck yeah, Corb. Like I love that album. That's my favorite album of his by a long shot, because it's just I'm such a history nerd, because he goes over the Mormons, he goes over the history of mounted cavalry, and it just a great album. I like that guy, but they always say that it's been said throughout the years that like it takes a good war to bring the country together, and I halfway believe that. Like I've kind of resigned myself to the fact that war is going to happen throughout history. It's a thing.
Yeah.
As long as there's humans around, there will be war. But we could be way smarter about it. And if we look at it, like we're they're pushing this support for Ukraine, which I honestly have nothing against Ukraine. I don't really care what happens in Eastern Europe. I really don't. And when you start to look into the history of Ukraine and the history of Russia, and you're like, well, this is just Russia and Russia Junior fighting each other, and so it's kind of a civil war almost. And at the same time, I just don't care about it. But in the meantime, we have the gayest dictator of all time on our northern border. Like literally, that dude has turned into a dictator over the years, and he is so fucking gay. I cannot stand that guy, and I find it hard to respect Canadians. And I know all the people from Canada that listen to my show didn't vote for the guy, but you're in the same category as the guys from California that are cool. I'm still talking shit about California. I'm still talking shit about Canada. Nothing against you folks, and I hope you know that. But he's the gayest dictator of all time. And then on our southern border, we have a narco
Castro's
state.
son.
Yeah. Also, Fidel Castro's son.
Probably. Let's be
Most
real.
likely. And he's not an American citizen, so he can't sue me for defamation. Fuck it. He's Castro's son. And this is a comedy podcast, so.
Just kidding.
Yeah. But then on our southern border, we have a narco state. And I was talking with the boys on Fence Post Politics, and I was like, I don't even know how you deal with Mexico. I honestly don't know what a good solution for Mexico is, because I'm at the point now where I'm like, you should just deal directly with El Chapo and his sons, because it seems like that's who really runs shit down there.
Yeah.
And like, if that means putting them in as dictators or as the government, like, we haven't had a problem doing that shit before, so why would we have a problem with it now when it makes sense on our southern border?
I mean, basically, isn't that what we did with Somalia a little bit with Black Hawk Down? We were dealing with the warlords. Like, there's what we were after that guy did.
That's what we did in Ukraine.
And, yeah, we just basically were, and let's be honest, Afghanistan, these, like, tribal leaders or whatever. So
Vietnam.
But like Mexico has this facade of having a
like a respectable country, and like nothing to get. I love Mexicans. I'm gonna pull a Trump. I love Hispanics.
Well, I was telling you that I kind of have it in my head to drive. Let's see if it makes it across the United States first. But I'd love to drive that vehicle down through South America and Central America and. Go down to I'd go down to the tip of Argentina, go down to Patagonia. But if I can, and I've seen other people do it, so I'm just totally dumb. This is why YouTube. I shouldn't watch YouTube.
Yeah.
Because now I get this dumb idea that I'm going to do this. But, Mexico, from just watching more about Mexico, it's a beautiful country.
Yeah.
And, I love the food.
The people are awesome too. But it's like California, like it's a beautiful country from what I understand. I was telling you at the feedlot. So I'm going to count myself as white. I'm half Mexican, but I was not raised Mexican at all. So culturally, I'm a white, like through and through. My blonde-haired, green-eyed wife speaks far better Spanish than I ever will, and I have the bloodline. So I'm just going to call myself white. There's me and the guy that rides pins with me, and the two office ladies are all white. My boss is Mexican descent, speaks fluent Spanish, but he's the whitest Mexican you've ever met in your life. But I won't count him as white, because he is a Mexican guy. He's just I don't know what what are the Asians? They have they call them Twinkies when they're yellow on the outside, white on the inside. Like the ones that kind of forsake their roots to become white. And so I don't know what the term for that is for the Mexican people, but Anyway, that would be what my boss is, and great guy, fucking awesome guy. I'm not talking shit on him. He'll tell you. He'll also tell you, like, I'm the whitest Mexican ever, but he's, fluent in Spanish, whatever. But the rest of the crew is, like, from Mexico, Mexican. They're immigrants from here, and I get along with them. I always get along with, I always have. I got nothing against the Mexican people, but same as California. I don't know what's going on over there. It's like, what the fuck is going on over there? And I don't know how you deal with it. And
I don't know either. And I mean, you think that all these immigrants or migrants or whatever, illegals or whatever you want to call them at the border, a lot of them aren't Mexican. A lot of them are like from Ecuador,
Honduras, El Salvador,
and so
Guatemala.
that means they're coming through Mexico.
Yeah.
So does Mexico have a problem with that, or do they just don't care?
See, I don't.
What's going on with that?
It's because the cartels are making money on both ends of the deal.
Probably making
And
money.
like I said,
coming
so
and going.
let's just make a deal with the cartels, install them as the new government, whatever. And honestly, if we're gonna fight a war, who do I want running logistics other than the Mexican cartels?
Yeah.
My God, man, like, let them do their thing.
Building submarines, for Pete's sake.
Shit, they just let them do their things. Like, and we all know Well, if you don't know now, I'm telling you, logistics wins wars.
Clearly.
And it logistically, it makes way more sense to invade Mexico, and then probably just keep rolling south. Just, like, maybe it's a little too imperialistic for me, but we're already imperialistic. Why don't we do it the right way? Do it what makes sense. Start with Canada, because that'll be easy. Gayest dictator of all time. Most of Western Canada be like, fuck yeah, bud. I'm on your side now. And it'd be, like, I think it'd be over in a couple days.
Yeah.
Mexico might take a little bit longer, but like I said, if we make a deal with the right person, and if it is indeed the Mexican government, which I don't think it is, I think they're toothless at best. I think you just make a deal with the cartels, and then, like I said, don't stop until you get to the tip of Argentina. And I like, for when I hear about this Malay guy, I kind of like him. But sorry, bud, this is America now.
Yeah.
You can be a governor or something.
Why can't we focus on North America?
Mm-hmm.
Imperialism on North America first. We don't need to, like, have imperialism in Ukraine. I don't want Ukraine.
Right.
I want Canada.
Well,
I want
and
all that oil and
yeah,
natural resources.
I know, and Ukraine's way the hell over there. Israel's way the hell over there.
They probably grow a fair amount of wheat in Canada, don't they?
Oh yeah,
So, I
yeah.
mean, we're good. We don't need Ukraine.
Yeah.
Just take Canada.
Canada's got a good agriculture base.
South Park
for
was
now.
their time. Invade Canada.
I know it. South Park creators Matt Stone and Trey Parker are right up there with Ron Paul on my list of important figures of the modern age.
If you want to understand American culture 10 years before it happens, just watch South Park. Oh my
It's
gosh.
so funny. I mean, like,
They predicted so much.
I think the Babylon Bee is right up there with that, because I mean I haven't
Their
listened.
stuff isn't even satire anymore.
I know it. I haven't listened to their podcast in quite some time, but they had a segment where there was, like, prophecy fulfilled, and it's an old Babylon Bee headline that came true.
Oh my gosh.
And they had a bunch of them, and you're just like, I'm at the point where I'm like, we deserve to be invaded because of how stupid of a country we are, but also, if we're gonna use this like really cool shit of our military somewhere, like, why don't we use it somewhere where it makes sense?
Yeah.
And North America makes way more sense than Ukraine. Like, we're never gonna see a return from that. Like, that investment is dead.
It's
I mean,
gone.
that is a sunk investment.
Well, it still makes you wonder where all that money we're giving them, all that military aid, how much of that is actually like getting to the front lines in real equipment, real guns, real ammo, real shells. How much of that is being siphoned off? Is it 10%? Is it 30%? Is it 50%? Is it 80%? How much of the money and the funds and the equipment that we're giving Ukraine is going to make some general or some dude rich over
Yeah.
in Ukraine, and then he's just gonna peace out and bail and jump ship when the whole thing finishes and falls apart.
Right.
And he's just lining his own pocketbooks. Or, how much money is it getting funneled back to politicians? I mean, it's so dirty. It'd be interesting to track all of that money and just really where it flows. I'd love to do that.
I'm so excited to read a book about this that summarizes the Ukraine-Russia war sometime in the future, like a deep dive, like a William Schreier, Rise and Fall of the Third Reich type deal, but just with the Ukraine-Russia war, because like how much of our cool shit that we gave to Ukraine got reverse engineered by Russia, and like how much of their cool shit have we been able to reverse engineer, and how quickly warfare changed with drones. Like almost overnight, we were like, oh, fuck, this is a different way of fighting war now.
It's crazy. Some of that drone footage, you're just like, man, this is like absolutely terrifying. Because you've got a drone overhead, you don't even know it. You have no idea.
So
it's just dropping grenades or bombs or whatever on you.
I would highly recommend, there's a episode of Grand Thumb where he has a British guy and an American dude. Both were former military. Now they're contractors or they're volunteers in like the Ukrainian Foreign Division, Foreign Legion, or whatever they call it. And they didn't go over any of the politics of it. They just went over like strictly the warfare aspect, and a lot of it, like particularly the tactics with drones and trench warfare. And it's so fascinating but horrifying at the same time. Like it's 1916 with 2024 weapons, and it's just like it's really fascinating from a military strategy, tactics, and like geopolitical view. But then like the human point of view, you're like, fuck around, that is so terrifying. And so you have and the guy said it multiple times where like you have these artillery barrages where the ground just explodes. Like the ground just starts exploding. You don't even hear it coming in. Like you hear the guns go off, and then all of a sudden the ground explodes. And then also you gotta look out for these drones, and then you gotta they call out, make sure that nobody has a drone in the area, and if they don't get a response, like in a muy pronto, then they're shooting that bitch out of the sky. And so now like people have started carrying shotguns, and strictly they work pretty good for trench warfare as well, but for shooting down drones. And it just, it's like, if you see a drone, you better fucking be moving. If it's not yours, you better fucking be moving, because there's artillery coming your way. And it's just like, on one hand, it's fascinating from me just loving military history and tactics and strategy. But on a human point of view, you're just like, fuck, man. And then also like we just wasted an entire generation of Ukrainian men and also Russian men as well.
Yeah, I wonder what the numbers really are.
Yeah,
Casualties.
Zelensky came out the other day and he said it was 31,000. And you're like, fuck off, dude.
I don't know how that can.
That's like a tenth probably of what they've actually lost. I've heard estimates of up to 400,000 on the Ukrainian sides, and then the Russian side's even worse, because they were just throwing, like the Wagner group there, particularly in like Bakhmut, was all Wagner group conscripts, but they were just prisoners. They're like, hey, you're in here for life. If you make it 6 months, you get your freedom, and then you get paid the whole time. And they're like, all right, whatever. But then no training, whatever. It was just like thrown at the wall, essentially. And so like it's like, yeah, Russia's losing dudes, but a lot of those dudes they don't care about anyways, and they're not part of like the reproducing public anyways. So, but like Ukraine's, I've heard stories where they're like picking up mentally disabled people off the street and just throwing them straight into the meat grinder, and you're like, blah.
That's awful. It's hard to say. It was like, well, I told you I was trying to look at the weather there in San Francisco.
Yeah.
And it was that and then you had a little bit more input on it, and it was where I guess the Israeli Defense Forces were trying to administer food and supplies.
Yeah.
Their convoy got stopped, and everyone's trying to get their food and supplies, but they didn't want to distribute it yet or something. And then you've got reports like, well, the IDF killed like 100 people just firing into the crowd. But it's like, well, maybe they only killed like 20 or something. And it's like, you don't even know.
Yeah, I have no idea.
I don't even know. I've seen places where there's been setups to make the IDF look bad. And then I've also seen where the IDF is just lying about everything.
Yeah.
Just doing horrific things themselves. So it's like, I don't even know.
Yeah, I know.
Also, at the end of the day, like, I hate to say it, but I just don't want to be involved in it.
Yep.
I feel terrible for the people. I'd love to see it stop. But what are we going to do? What is
Right.
the United States going to do? It's going to be a no-win situation.
We're gonna sell one side a bunch of bombs, and then we're gonna send a bunch of food to the side that's getting bombed.
Yeah.
You know, and just like, we're helping.
And not get paid anything
Right.
for any of that.
Yeah, probably, most likely. Yeah, and like that whole story, it's awful. But it's from what the best explanation I've heard, and I don't know how true it is, but it was Dan Holloway from the Drinking Bros was talking about it, and he said it was essentially like that scene in Black Hawk Down, where the people just rush the truck and then they spray to back them up. But in this case, so it was Israeli soldiers on the back of the trucks, and they had Gazans driving the trucks. And then when they pulled in, because Israel's just starving them out. And if anybody wants to push back on that, just look it up. That is the legitimate facts. Israel has a siege all around Gaza, and the only food they have is what comes in on those trucks. They can't produce any of it. They bombed all the farmland. They flooded a lot of places with seawater, and so their people are literally starving to death. So these aid trucks come in, and all these starving Gazans, Palestinians, rush the trucks, and the Israelis, from what I don't know whether they were shooting low or they were, but it's turned into kind of just unbridled bloodlust over there. So I wouldn't be surprised if they were shooting to kill either. I'm not saying they were, but I'm saying I wouldn't be surprised if they did. But from what sounded like is like they mowed down a few of them, but then the drivers took off, and then the bulk of the people that were killed were either run over by trucks or trampled in the crowd. But it's just an all-around fucked situation. And yeah, those bullets most likely were paid for with our money, and then all the food was most likely paid for with our money. Not to mention the trucks. I don't know. But it's like, I don't want any part of any of that.
Yeah.
I just look over at that situation on both sides of that conflict, and I just say, what the fuck is wrong with you people?
Yeah, and it makes you wonder too how far Israel's going to take all of this.
Mm-hmm.
They're talking about invading Lebanon or whatever.
I know, and they're
I'm just like, it reminds me, and maybe it's not a perfect analogy, but Grapes of Wrath.
Yeah.
Where you've got Lenny, right, who's the big, mentally disabled older brother to, I forget the other character.
I do too.
But he keeps getting in trouble, and eventually, his brother just puts him out.
Yeah.
Because they can't, it's such a liability. And I feel like it's this thing, it's the situation with Israel, except maybe we're the big older brother. I don't know, but, they're going to get us into a position where the United States, they're going to call upon the United States because they're going to get in trouble.
They're going to pick
a fight.
They're going to bite off more than they can chew.
And then it's like, well, what is the United States going to do here? It was like when the Yom Kippur War, where the Israel is just getting beat really badly. Now, that was a different time with a different landscape in the Middle East, where Egypt and these countries were like, we're really wanting to take down Israel, and they had the means to, and they weren't on the U.S. bribery payroll.
Yeah.
But I'm afraid Israel's going to get something started over there that they can't finish, and then expect the United States to finish it. And then the real question is, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
Are we going to just let Israel fall? or are we going to have to come save Israel in some way? And I don't want to do either one of those things.
No, I
wish Israel just kind of get back to minding their own business, but they don't seem to want to. This seems to be like the key moment to where Netanyahu and these guys and these neocons over there want to be like, okay, we can do a land grab now.
Yeah. I think so, and also Netanyahu politically is done as soon as the conflict is over, and unless something really crazy happens and like public favor all of a sudden turns around on him, he's pretty much done politically. Like they want him gone.
I suspect that I don't really have a good idea on this, or good feel for this, but you gotta think that there's probably a lot of Israelis over there that are like, maybe we need to pull back and calm down, de-escalate.
I know, and see, this is where I don't get Israel as I don't get what they do a lot of times, because they are heavily reliant on imports. They don't produce a whole lot of the stuff they need. Like they have some oil, but not much. They have some agriculture, but not a whole lot. And then the deal with the Houthis is, so all of those ships, and it's putting pressure on Egypt too. So if you look on a map, and I could pop it up, but I said I'm not going to. But you have the Red Sea. It funnels into, I think it's the Gulf of Aden, which then funnels into the Suez Canal, which empties out into the Mediterranean Sea. And the Yemen's on the east side of the Gulf of Aden, and they've been attacking Israeli ships, they've been attacking American ships, British ships. I don't think they've attacked a whole lot of ships that aren't like directly implicated in this conflict. So it's mostly ships headed for Israel, U.S., British ships is essentially what they've been attacking. They've probably attacked a few others, but for the most part, that's like they've been pretty concentrated on what they do. But they've managed to disrupt that whole shipping lane. Egypt, I can't remember the percentage I heard, but it was way upwards of 50% of their GDP, I think. Don't quote me on this. Maybe it was 40%. But either way, a huge chunk of their GDP comes from commissions through the Suez Canal. Suez Canal traffic has dropped 90% since this Israel-Palestine deal is going on. And a lot of those ships were headed to Israel. And so, and then they mobilized all their reserve forces, so like their workforce is depleted because they're all deployed to Gaza. And so like their economy is probably hurting pretty bad right now. And it's a lot to, I mean, I'm not condoning any of the attacks or whatever. Like I said, I look at that whole region, both sides of it, and I think, what the fuck is wrong with you people?
Yeah.
But at some point, like, when they had the 6-day truce or whatever, or ceasefire, the Houthis stopped attacking ships in the Red Sea. And so you're like, all right, so you guys need to wrap it up, and commerce will go back to normal. But in the meantime, the insurance rates on global shipping have skyrocketed. All the ships that would normally go through the Suez Canal are now going around the Horn of Africa, and meanwhile the Panama Canal is the traffic is way down there because they're in a drought, and the lake that feeds the Panama Canal has a really low water level.
Don't they need to widen the Panama Canal again? What's crazy
I don't know for sure.
So
but
I'm pretty sure there's a lot of ships now that have to go around. If they do need to get to the east, I guess a lot of times they just go to California and then truck it or something. But
yeah,
I mean the Panama Canal, I saw where. Like, I think particularly it's our aircraft carriers. A lot of aircraft carriers now can't get through there.
Really?
Now, some aircraft carriers can get through the Panama Canal. And the crazy thing is, I think it was under Teddy Roosevelt, right?
Yeah.
He made them double the width back then.
Yeah.
And now we have such mega ships rolling through there that now we have a lot of ships that still can't get through.
Well, I bet the maintenance is pretty shoddy because the Panamanians have not ever been known to make...
Probably should have never turned it over to them.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Is like if we would have just kept it, we... As shitty as we are, like we're pretty anal about shipping lanes. If that's the whole fucking reason we're at war with the Houthis right now. And so I would imagine they would have kept that canal in good shape. But
I don't know. When did they turn it? They turned it over in like, I don't know, was it?
It was in the 90s or something.
Was it in the 90s?
I'm not for sure. But I think it was been like somewhat recently, within like the last 50 years, I think. But maybe not. I don't know. Either way, it's just like, I think we probably should have kept that.
Yeah.
Or made them buy it from us, but we just turned it over.
I don't know what the deal was.
See, I always think about like if we were to withdraw from the world and actually like actually bring the troops home. Like, what would we do with those military bases? And I'd just be like, fucking buy it from me, or we're blowing it up. If I was president, that's what I would do.
Well, that was the crazy. I mean, when I lived over there in Germany, my buddy and I, who was over there, we would, we didn't have cars or anything, so we'd just ride bikes everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd go just ride our bikes, and a couple times we came across, and I should send you these pictures, you could post them or whatever, but these old, like, U.S. military bases.
Yeah.
And they had, like, what is it called, like, anti-tank stuff, so the tanks couldn't roll in.
Oh, yeah.
But it had, like, machine gun nests and, like, little pillboxes
Mm-hmm.
and all this stuff, because it was, like, Cold War.
Oh, yeah.
Deal. And now a lot of some of the military bases were, like, revitalized for basically, like, low-income housing in Germany.
Mm.
But then there's a few that you go out in the woods, and all of a sudden, here's a military base that's being run down, and it's just completely abandoned in the woods. It's starting to grow up, but there it is, probably from the Cold War.
Yeah.
And there's just a ton of those all over Germany. This particular base that I'm thinking of was around in between like Gießen and Marburg in Germany that we went and we discovered, and there's like some graffiti and stuff.
Yeah.
Otherwise it was like getting overgrown, but there's still like, razor wire and chain link fences and stuff like that. It was wild.
Did you ever ask any of those Germans about what it was like under the Soviets?
Well, most of my friends came from
West Germany.
West Germany, but it is always an interesting question to ask because I think probably one of the most interesting stories was my friend Melis.
Mm-hmm.
I think I told you about him from Estonia.
Yeah.
And so I got to know him. He was at school where I was at in Germany, and I thought he was Russian at first.
Uh-huh.
He hated to hear that. Because he did not like Russians. And so we were taking this class, and there were Russians in the class, and he was from Estonia, and I noticed that the Russians would talk to him in Russian, and he would speak English back to them. And I was like, huh. So anyhow, I got to know him, and I asked him, like Melis, like, why do you not speak Russian? You know Russian. He could speak Estonian, Russian, English, German, and I think a bit of French or something.
Probably Ukrainian too.
Probably. He was, just a really smart guy.
If I had to guess, I just know that they're a very similar language because they're essentially the same people.
Yeah. He hated Russians though, and he said, I speak back to them in English because I want them to just remember I'm not Russian or Soviet. Like, it's out of spite.
Better dead than red.
Yeah, and so he wouldn't drink vodka. He said that's the drink of communists.
Fuck yeah.
And he would only drink like American bourbon and stuff. But the interesting story about him, I should say, is he was, I would ask him like what it was like under Soviet rule and stuff. He was like, well, basically, you just couldn't do anything. You were just like kind of dependent on food sources, and you couldn't really have a business. You just couldn't really grow well.
Well, didn't they assign you your career as well?
Yeah, he was young enough that he remembers being under Soviet rule, but not old enough to remember too much.
Oh, so he wasn't of working age then.
Yeah, but this was when we were in college.
Yeah.
And that was back, 2007.
Oh, okay. So yeah.
So he was still pretty young under Soviet rule, but his parents, he hears a lot of stories, and probably the most interesting story about him was his grandfather, who was pressed into service, served for the Soviets, and then somewhere along the line he deserted the Soviets, and he went and joined the Nazis because he preferred Germany over the Soviets.
A lot of those Eastern European countries did. Like when they rolled into Ukraine and Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, like a lot of those, like they greeted the Germans as liberators because they kind of were at the time for a minute.
Yeah, for a hot minute. And so then he fought for the Germans, and then I need to talk to him again and get the details, but actually he'd be interesting to interview.
Yeah, like we should
he'd jump on too. I think he's a farmer in Estonia right now.
Nice.
Anyhow,
we should do a menage a trois podcast and have a good old bull session.
But his grandfather ultimately deserted the Nazis because he realized like they're not going to win after like Stalingrad and stuff, and he walked home. And I forget, Meili said it was it was a couple hundred miles to walk home, and he walked home to Estonia. And
people used to do that, by the way.
Yeah,
like they just used to walk places. They didn't have rascal scooters back then, so.
Yeah, but he walked home.
How many rascal scooters did you see in Mississippi, by the way?
What are the rascal scooters?
Like the fat people scooters.
Oh.
Like in Walmart, you have the shopping carts, and then you have the motorized shopping carts.
Quite a few. West Virginia, though, probably beats them out. Because West Virginia is probably, I think Mississippi's more obese, but then West Virginia is like right behind Mississippi. But I feel like I noticed it more in West Virginia.
We'll come back to that. I didn't mean to derail your conversation.
But yeah, I mean, anyhow, I guess his grandfather made it back to Estonia, but his grandfather had fought so bravely for the Nazis, he had medals. He had bling.
That's crazy.
He hid his medals, never told his family about, like, his story, had hid it. I don't know if his wife knew when he came back and got married.
That's so wild.
And then, like, right before he died and after the fall of the Soviet Union, he, like, informed them, like, here are where the medals are and all this. And told
That's
them
insane.
And so, but anyhow, Meili's.
So was he like was he a Nazi, or was he just pressed into service with the Germans?
I think he signed up.
Yeah.
Because he was like, hey, I could get fed. They're better equipped. And
so he was a soldier of fortune at that point.
I think he was like, I'm going to be on the winning side.
And of fortune, maybe he's putting it wrong way, but like he was on the.
He's better. This is better than the Soviets.
Yeah, and then when it became obvious that like, oh, I'm gonna get fucked up here. I mean, I don't blame the guy. I don't know what I would have done in that circumstance. I always like to think I'd be fighting resistance somewhere.
At that point, if you were of age, so to speak, you're probably going to be pressed into service by someone.
One of the sides.
So I think he was trying to pick the winning side and the side that treated him the best.
It's hard to call the Nazis the better side, but when you look at the statistics, I don't know. But also that comes back to you can't be so specific in your genocide.
Yeah.
You can't. You got to be blanket genocide and not specific genocide.
Well, anyhow, it was funny because, Meili's just grew up hating the Soviet Union and the Russians. And I guess Meili's told me about this instance that occurred in Estonia. There was like some statue in Estonia, and it was of some Soviet, I don't recall who or what it was about, but it was in the city center.
Mm-hmm.
In Estonia, this is post-Soviet Union, right? They decided to move it on the outskirts of town. Just, it's kind of like, well, we don't really want to have a Soviet statue in the middle of the center city square anymore. We're going to do something else. Well, there's still Russians that live in Estonia.
Yeah.
Because what Russia tried to do was actually like pay Russians to live in other countries, to like Russianize it, if you will, Sovietize it, or whatever you want to call it.
That's why the Donbass region is so pro-Russian.
Yeah. And so they did that, and so there were Russians in Estonia still, and when they heard that they're going to move this statue of some Soviet, they started to riot. Well, in Estonia, and this is what Melee's told me, is there's basically like how we have volunteer fire departments over here.
Okay.
At least we do in West Virginia.
Yeah.
Our fire departments are volunteer.
we have a volunteer fire department here.
They have like a volunteer police force in Estonia, which is interesting.
Yeah.
And he said when word got out that these Russians were rioting, he said, I think this was his quote, like, every Estonian showed up because they wanted to beat some Russian ass.
That's funny.
And needless to say, they quelled that little uprising, and they moved that statue outside of town. But, Melee's just couldn't stand the Soviet Union. He felt like just abused by them, essentially.
Well,
and I think a lot of Eastern Europeans have felt that way.
Yeah, I'd be really interested to talk to somebody from that was in East Germany during that, because I forget the statistic, like the exact numbers, but like the number of abortions that happened in Germany when the Russians rolled in was enormous, because they just raped everybody, particularly the Mongols. Because like everybody thinks Soviet Union, think Russia, and that Russia was a huge part of it. Don't get me wrong, but they had all these Soviet republics, and Mongolia was one of them. Which, I mean, Mongolia is not really even a country. If you talk to Jake Zilke, the guy that wrote the Lost Cowboy, like, there's one city in Mongolia, and that's the capital city, and it's only there because the Soviets built it. And but they conscripted a bunch of Mongols to fight in what they call the Great Patriotic War, which, when you look at it from their perspective, it was the Great Patriotic War, because Germany went all the way up to 40 miles from Moscow before they got stalled. And they conquered all of Ukraine, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland. But Poland wasn't a Soviet republic at the time, but they became a Soviet republic. And, Ukraine and Poland got boned so hard in World War II.
I feel both those countries just were on the losing end both ways.
Well, Ukraine now is like, Ukraine is the modern day version of Poland. We've given them these guarantees that we're not going to back up.
Yeah.
And we can't, because if we gave them security guarantees, that means we're in a hot war with Russia, the largest nuclear superpower on Earth. We're a better army, we're better economy. We kind of dwarf the Russians, except in the number of nuclear weapons. That's the only thing that Russia beats us in right now. Well, and actually, military industrial capacity right now.
There's so many nukes, so it doesn't matter. You get to the point where
nobody wins.
So many nukes, it would still be a stalemate. Earth would be done.
Well, just the number of nukes that would go off would make the Earth uninhabitable for humans for a long time. There'd be some animals that would.
Maybe you could survive in New Zealand or Australia.
Maybe, yeah, maybe Aruba or somewhere like that. But let's face it, if we're nuking Russia, we're probably nuking China too. So.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's stupid, and every time we send another package of weapons over to Ukraine, we get closer to that switch, and that's the thing that gets me. Is I'm no fan of Russia, but I really got no beef with Russia.
Yeah, well, a lot of people don't know this, but in some regards, you could make an argument that Russia has been, kind of a decent ally to the United States. Well, before the Soviet Union, we're a decent ally of the United States, because I think during the American Revolution, they didn't officially partake in anything, but they did offer like words of support. They wanted the United States to break free of Britain. And then I think in the American Revolution, even though the British wanted the South to win and the United States to break apart, Russia did provide a little bit of aid and help and technical expertise, I think, to the North because they wanted the United States to stay strong. And I think it was self-serving. Russia and Britain have always been at it.
Yeah.
And they felt like they wanted to keep a strong country over here in North America that could kind of at least prevent Britain from coming back over here, taking it and growing in power.
Well, and if Britain would have kept the states, eventually they would have had the whole United States, and that's just a little puddle jump over to
they
Russia.
Would have taken Canada.
Oh yeah, fucking Canada.
They would have taken Quebec. Like, get these French out of here.
But if, like, say that the Louisiana Purchase happens under British rule, which, I mean, who's to say if that would have happened or not? Because the French and the Brits always, like, they're allies, but not really.
Yeah.
But then, like, it's just a short little jump over to Russia from the West Coast, and so I mean, it makes sense that Russia would have supported us, and I don't know. It's just that whole thing. I always wonder, like, would Hitler have been that bad had the Brits and the French not declared war on him? If they would have just let him do his thing in Eastern Europe and Russia, like, would he have taken Moscow? Probably.
Yeah.
And
I also wonder, though, too, if he hadn't been interrupted with fighting a war with France and Britain, and then, of course, the United States. Like, how far in development were their heavy water plant, things like that. I mean, if they had continued to, I mean, Germany was cutting edge technology.
Oh yeah,
and I mean, they had some of the brightest minds, and if they had been able to, like, really refine missiles and rockets and things like that, could I mean, if they had wanted to, would they have been able to just take Britain and France? And I don't know. And it seemed like Hitler did want France for just, like, luxurious reasons.
Yeah.
He wanted the artwork. He wanted the prestige. He wanted Linz, where I actually was in Austria for a while. He wanted that to be, like, the cultural center of Europe. And that was his hometown, by the way. Yeah, I think he probably ultimately would have picked a fight with France.
Yeah, probably so. And then, I mean, that would have brought everybody in anyways. But
yeah,
it's and also, like, there might not have been a Jew left on the European continent as well.
Probably
but also, he tried to give away the Jews to just about anybody who would take them. And
really? How was he trying to do that?
Like, he was like, actively like, we're pushing them out. You guys can take them if you want.
Oh.
And nobody took them.
Wow.
It's kind of like the Palestinians today. Like, the Jews are trying to push them out, and the Arabs are all pissed off, but they're also not taking any refugees at all.
Really want any.
Yeah. I don't know. People just kind of suck when it comes down to it. People can really be shitty.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, and I don't know. It's just one of those things that, like, you know, that show Man in the High Castle. The book was pretty good. Philip K. Dick. You know, and then I think Spike Lee.
So I've never watched that or read it. The book, is the premise just like Nazis take over the world?
Yeah, essentially. So it was the Axis powers won the war. The Germans were the first in space, but and they essentially divided America between. So it was like from the Rockies west was Japanese controlled, and then there was like a kind of a no man's land around the Rockies, and then east of that was Nazi controlled. It was it's a good show. It gets a little weird, and the book is the same way. It gets a little weird, but it's interesting. I enjoyed it. And I think Spike Lee made a movie. I think it was Spike Lee that made it. I watched it a while ago, but it was like if the Confederates had won the Civil War, and
I think that was probably not as intellectually done as it sounds.
No, I don't think it was, but it was still. I mean, Spike Lee's a good filmmaker, so it was interesting. But how intellectually honest it was is also.
But hey, if I go down to Argentina, take my 1991 Toyota Land Cruiser down to Argentina, maybe I can put my German to use down there.
Yeah, you probably could.
Because we all know that there's some German villages in Argentina, and they speak German. They're blue-eyed, blonde-haired.
Yeah, they have Oktoberfest every year.
Got Oktoberfest down there. You know,
they're like Bavarian villages.
Yeah, I mean, hey, I can put my German to practice down there.
Yeah, it's funny how many Nazis made it over to South America.
You know, there's a good reason though. I mean, like the Argentinian government had like a lot of interest in how Hitler did things, and they kind of had
fascism was pretty popular. It still is. If you look around.
So Argentina was like, hey, we'll take some of y'all, and they were my understanding is like they helped advise Argentina for a while, and then Argentina got to a point where they were like, we don't really want you, but now you're here, so we're just gonna like pretend you're not really here, but you're here.
You can go do your thing, but don't cause too much trouble.
I feel like Hitler definitely didn't make it there. I saw something though. There's some show or something where it's like Hitler wakes up and it's like 15 or 16, and he's in Germany. Did you? What is this?
I've heard of that show. But it was all in German, right?
I think maybe so. I need to find where did I see that? But anyhow, he wakes up and he's like reading the newspapers, and he's like, "What?" And he's like, "What?" There's like, all these Jews doing stuff and like all these people, and he just can't believe it. His mind is like blown.
That would be the ultimate troll. He's just in a deep coma for 50 years, and then he wakes up and, oh my God, we lost.
Oh my gosh, bring him to the United States on certain months of the year.
Oh fuck. Yeah, he would
month or something. Oh my gosh, his mind would be blown.
Oh, it'd be amazing though.
Shoot though. I mean, I even think though, like I was telling you, like my papa wouldn't understand half of like the stuff that's going on.
Oh, I know.
I don't know how I'd even explain it to him.
Yeah, there's times I want to ask Boots about stuff because he's been around quite a while, and just like, did you ever imagine any of this stuff when you were growing up? And like, nah, man, I was just punching cows.
I kind of wonder. Do you think Boots is like aware of a lot of this stuff? Or do you think he's just at that point where he's just doing his thing and not?
Well, I don't think he ever really paid a whole lot of attention to it, but I think he's relatively informed. Like he watches the news and stuff.
Probably knows.
But I don't think he's anywhere close to down the rabbit hole like we are. But but I think he's generally somewhat aware of what's going on. But I know like when he was growing up, like I forget what it was, like. Might have been like the Civil Rights Act or something.
Well, he was in Korea, right?
Korea.
He strung barbed wire.
Yeah, on the DMZ.
Which is pretty actually, like kind of interesting that him being a cowboy just stringing barbed wire over in Korea. Didn't you say you joked with him and said it's probably the best strand of length of barbed wire?
Yeah, it was probably the easiest stretch of fence you ever built. He said, well, it wasn't easy, but it was. We definitely didn't stretch it tight.
Yeah. But sorry, what were you saying about him?
I want to say it was like the Civil Rights Act or something, but it got passed and he didn't know about it for months because he was just out on the wagon. And maybe it wasn't the Civil Rights Act, I don't know, but it was some big event that he didn't know about for well later. I mean, and it was just because he was on the wagon the whole time. And so it's also Like there's kind of a beauty in that too. Just like I mean, I guess the world just keeps on going
to an extent.
Yeah,
it's true.
He's an interesting cat. I don't ask him about that stuff much, but I do like. I asked him about the impeachment stuff, and he's like, I've never seen anything like this before, and he didn't go very far into detail, Of course, he's a pretty conservative guy, not just in his lifestyle, but politics too, and but he just doesn't talk politics much. But there's certain things I got to ask him because it's just so wild. And I'm like, you ever see anything like that? You ever think you'd see anything like that? And he's just as mind boggled as we are.
Well, the guy I bought the vehicle from, he's a little bit old. I think I don't know how old he is. My guess is he's in his 50s maybe.
Okay.
Well, I guess I could do the math on this. He said he was, maybe he's not that much older. Said he was 12 years old, I think. Maybe he was 17 in 1991 when he came to the United States.
Okay.
The Soviet Union.
So if he was 12 in 91, that'd put him born in 79. So he'd be Generation X.
Yeah. Well, he was interesting because I was like, I just really can't place your accent, and he was like, yeah, I'm Russian, because I talked to him on the phone. I just wasn't really sure. I didn't ask him. But he's like, yeah, I'm Russian. I'm not a spy. And I was like, all right, this guy's at least funny. But, he had family there in San Francisco, and that's why he went there. It wasn't like opportunity or anything. And then when he got there, a couple months after he got to the United States, the Soviet Union fell and collapsed. And I don't know, I need to talk to him again. And he said he would be on a podcast.
Hell yeah.
And how he ended up in the United States during the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
Because it seems hard to do.
Yeah.
But he did that and, went to school, learned English, and then he was a computer programmer, computer science guy, and he just happened to be in the right place at the right time, I think, in California to be into computers in the 90s.
That's so interesting.
But, yeah, he's a really interesting guy. And what he brought up to me, which I think was the most fascinating thing from a Russian perspective.
Yeah.
So he was from St. Petersburg, and he said that the greatest thing about the United States when he arrived here was he called it freedom of movement.
Yeah.
Because over in Russia, you were assigned to, you're from St. Petersburg, you never left St. Petersburg.
Yeah.
You didn't go on some sort of trip or vacation, or you didn't just drive down the road to go to Moscow. You stayed in St. Petersburg. You didn't move around in St. Petersburg. And so I think that's probably why he had this Land Cruiser.
Yeah.
Because he told me stories about when he was young. I think at one point he was driving to, he and his buddy, he said, I don't know why I wasn't thinking about this, because I'm from Russia where it's cold. But they were driving to see Yellowstone in a 2-wheel drive sedan in the winter. And then he found out it was really bad snow. And then he's like, that weekend we diverted and drove all the way to Seattle.
Oh, wow.
South Seattle. So he's like, I don't know how many miles, but he clearly had an affinity to take road trips because it's something he never could have done in Russia. And he talks about the freedom of movement in the United States. It's incredible. He feels from his perspective.
It is pretty incredible when you look at it from our perspective too. Because if I got the money, I can go get a plane ticket and fly out to West Virginia.
Yeah,
today.
And today. And for me, if I want, I'm just driving around the United States, and who's gonna stop me?
Yeah.
Except for maybe an engine warning light.
Yeah.
But I got to get rid of those California plates. I feel like I'm going to be judged a lot. I'm going to show up in West Virginia, and there's been some Californians come to West Virginia, but West Virginians are super conservative.
Yeah.
One of the more conservative groups states in the nation for sure. And I'm like, man, here I am showing up. And we got that national park, the New River Gorge now. We have all those Mercedes transport vans.
Oh, shit,
California plates. And I'm going to be driving in West Virginia with California plates. Oh, it's shameful.
I'm a native, I promise.
look at my ID. I have a concealed carry permit. Look at this.
Yeah.
There's a gun in the truck.
I got a gun, I promise you. Yeah, that's funny when, I don't know, like, that's how I kind of know a state's pretty cool. It's just like, what's your thoughts on guns? And it's like, more the better. All right, I like that state.
Yeah. West Virginia is the state that removed sales tax from guns.
That's so
and
cool.
Ammo. It's tax-free.
That's awesome.
You can go in the state, and I think it's something like they had to like define the code a little bit, because it was like, well, what defines gun sales? Is it like if you buy a gun case? Is that tax-free? Is the ammo tax-free? Is it like gun parts are tax-free because it's part of the gun? And so this was the debate in West Virginia.
That's awesome.
It's like, how much stuff are we not going to have a sales tax
I love
on?
that it was never a debate whether it was going to pass. It was just a debate on how far you want to go.
They're like, this is so great. Now we just need to know, what are we going to eliminate the sales tax? It's like, we won't tax food, and we won't tax guns and ammo.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And you guys are constitutional carry too, right?
Yeah, you don't have to. In West Virginia, now I have my concealed carry permit because it gives me, West Virginia has reciprocity with like 27 or 33 some states, and you're good to go. But if you're, I don't know if you're out of state, but if you're at least from West Virginia, you don't have to get concealed carry permit.
Yeah.
You can just carry in West Virginia, no questions asked.
That's the way it is in Kansas too. They passed that, and it went into the state constitution, like right before I moved out, and because I was I was getting ready to take my concealed carry class, and then I was like, man, all right, I'm not going to do that now, and I kind of wish I had of, just because like Nevada's not a constitutional carry state. It's open carry state, and it's a shall. Well, I guess every state now is a shall issue permit state. But I don't really kick myself, but I'm like, maybe I should have taken that course just because. But then also I'm like, fuck it, I don't need it, and it's only illegal if you get caught.
Well, I mean, I looked at it, and I figured I was driving across the country. I wanted to have some sort of weapon.
Yeah.
And so I looked at the rules pretty closely, and I did send, on the airline, checked the bag, took a gun out with me here to California, and then since I was leaving California immediately, it was legal to have it.
Yeah.
And then picked it up from the airport, and then, have transported it, and still has to be like locked up in a case, separate from the back of your vehicle. But it is, I guess, the thing that if you are going to ship guns, you got to look at the ultimate destination, because, like in West Virginia, you can ship a gun. Like, it was no big deal. When I went into the airport in West Virginia, I didn't even tell him what it was. He was like, got a firearm to declare? Because he looked at the case and just knew. I was like, yep, all right, just pop it up. I mean, it was like every day in the West Virginia airport. But when I looked online a little more closely at the Oakland airport, in West Virginia, you can pack ammo with your gun.
Yeah.
Your gun has to be unloaded, and TSA says your gun has to be proven to be unloaded. But you can have ammunition in the case and check baggage. Well, in Oakland, you can only have 11 rounds of ammo show up with 11 rounds. So I just didn't pack any ammo.
Yeah.
Because I figured, well, I'd better just be on the safe side, not have any. Not work, because it needed to be 11 rounds in original packaging. Well, so then I'm going to have to take all this ammo out of a box and only have 11 rounds. And it just seems silly. So
dumb.
I didn't bring any ammo. But you know what? I was like unsure about doing that because shipping the gun on an airline, check baggage to California. But you know what? No problems. And even at the Oakland airport, I told them, because it came on a later flight, it didn't get transferred in Atlanta, and they didn't act like it was any big deal there. So I guess people must be doing it.
I guess so.
On a regular enough basis that people don't blink an eye at it.
See, California has been losing big in the courts on the gun issue here lately, and Firearms Policy Coalition, I talk about them a lot. I don't know if I talk them on the podcast as much, but I always recommend people go follow them on Instagram or Twitter. but they literally as soon as a new gun control law goes into effect, they have a lawsuit ready, and their meme game on Instagram is
great. I need to follow them. I think I've seen some of their stuff.
It's always just like lawsuit printer go.
Yeah,
and then it's always like it's always one of those like crying face memes, but it's Gavin Newsom, and their caption every time there's a new law enacted, they'll post a picture of the lawsuit filed, and their caption is always "fuck you, no." And I love that stance, and that's where I'm at on guns nowadays. Like I'm not a huge gun guy. Like I don't nerd out on guns, but I understand the importance, and I understand how vital the Second Amendment is to everybody, not just us, but like the right to self-defense is essential. And so like I've tried arguing with statistics and whatever, and that does help. I think that's an important aspect of promoting gun rights. Yeah. But I'm at the point now where it's like, no, fuck you, no, it's not happening.
It's like I forget. I've got some liberal family on my mom's side, and they're like, well, what do you need an AR-15 for hunting for? Like, it's not for hunting.
Yeah.
It's for when the government comes after me. That's what it's for. I don't need an AR-15 for hunting. I've got other guns for that.
Right.
I've got a 30-06 for that. I've got, shotguns for I don't need an AR-15 for hunting. Now, maybe coyotes if you want, but I don't need an AR-15 for hunting. That's not what it's there for.
Yeah, it's there to protect yourself, whether it be from home invaders or a tyrannical government. Yep. That's what it's there for.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But it's, just when it comes to guns, people from other countries have no understanding of the gun culture in the United States and really the problems in the United States. I mean, like you said, we're against a narco state.
Yeah.
And then you've got most gun violence is gang violence, drug violence.
Well, and what they classify as gun violence, 2/3 of that is suicide.
Yeah.
2/3.
Yeah, 2/3 is suicide. So, okay, unfortunately, suicide's terrible.
Yeah.
Hate it. But people who are going to commit suicide will find a way if they're that determined. And okay, so you take that out, and then you look at how much is like drug violence or drug-related violence, and it's a ton. And the United States has a serious drug problem with us being backed up to a narco state. But some of my European friends, they've been over to our place, and they've seen the guns that between my dad and we own, and they're always like amazed.
Yeah.
Now they'll say like, you don't need an AR-15, but then we take them out shooting an AR-15, and they're like, this is awesome.
Yep.
This is a ton of fun. And I think I told you too, one of my German friends was like, I got a Henry 223 lever action.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh, that's pretty cool. And I sent him the Bren Hill song, Lever Action Forever. He's like, he couldn't believe. He's like, Americans sing a song about a lever action? I'm like, yeah, of course we do.
Yeah.
There's probably a song about Sharps rifles or something out there. I'm sure there's
well, listen to any rap song, and they'll talk about their Glock. Yeah. We like guns here.
Americans just love it.
And I don't think there's anything wrong with it. And I think that's what's kept us from going into full autocracy like most of Europe.
Yeah. I'm convinced that maybe in every little bureaucrat or politician's mind, in the back of their head, they're like, well, we can't be too totalitarianism because there's too many people out there that at the end of the day are just too armed. And who knows how something like that would... I was telling you, like, it would have to be the federal government or the military trying to go door to door to get people's guns, because the sheriff in my county, when I was in there renewing my concealed carry permit, he knows me. He knows who I am.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, what do you like to carry? Like, he engages me in like, oh, what do you like to carry? I was like, well, usually for concealed, I like my Smith & Wesson M&P Shield. It's narrow, loaded with hollow point 9mm. He's like, yeah, I can understand that. It's like good concealment.
Yeah.
And this is my local sheriff. So is the local sheriff and police department going to do that in West Virginia? Heck no. It was suicide. They're not going to do that. It's going to have to come from, the military trying to round it up or the federal government.
Yeah.
And that's what I think is the key, is if you live in a place where you know your local people, they're just not going to come after you.
Second Amendment sanctuary county here, so I ain't worried about shit.
Yeah.
Like if an ATF guy shows up at my door and he don't have a warrant, I'll just call the sheriff and they'll come arrest him.
Exactly. The sheriff, this is something I need to do more research on. It's everyone's telling me, like, the sheriff has this crazy amount of power
Really
in
do.
their jurisdiction.
Posse comitatus, I think, is the term, and I don't know exactly what all it means, but
we need to have a sheriff on and talk to him.
I know it. We really should.
A good sheriff. The Maricopa County.
Yeah, Joe.
Get him on.
What was it? Joe Arpaio, I think.
Yeah, what powers do you really have? Because I think aren't there? What do they call those local positions that are like stated in the Constitution? Essentially, it's like in mayor and like sheriff. One.
I think so.
Those guys wield a fair amount of power.
Yeah.
You don't think of it, but because they don't need to wield it most of the time. But
Yeah.
They can.
So, like, our governor right now used to be the sheriff of Clark County, Joe Lombardo, and he's kind of your traditional, as we know, at least in our lifetime, traditional Republican. But also, he was the guy that talked down the Bundy clan and the feds when they had that standoff at Bunker Hill or Bunkerville, and but he went up to the BLM guys. He's like, "You're not taking their cattle. You're not arresting these people. Go on about your way." And like he played mediator. He also was in charge of the Las Vegas shooting investigation. So he's got that against him. I don't know if he did anything dirty. I just know that we don't know what the fuck happened on that deal.
Yeah. Well, it also makes you wonder.
Yeah.
Like, was he trying to do the investigation?
Exactly. So I don't know anything about. I just know he headed up the investigation. I don't know. I have. That's one of those rabbit holes I haven't really gone down.
It would be interesting. And who knows if he could even really talk about it.
That's one of those crazy one. Like, that was a crazy amount of people that got killed that day. But there's videos all over online.
The shooter, really? Was it? Do we know like who? What type?
He was like he was a high stakes gambler. That's what we know about him.
He was a high stakes gambler.
Yeah, and but there's videos of like side by side audio of the Vegas shooting and a M240, squad automatic weapon essentially, machine gun. The firing rate's identical, the sound is identical, and you're like, I thought that dude had an AR-15 and a bump stock. But like these are videos from military people that know what they're talking about, and they're like, no, that's a M240, and you're like, huh. So what actually happened? And like I said, I haven't gone down that rabbit hole. I'm not going to accuse anybody of anything, but I do know that we don't have a fucking clue what actually went on.
How many people did he?
49.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah.
Well, it was. I mean, thankfully, I do not know of any. Maybe some time ago, but I don't know of any mass shooting, quote unquote, in West Virginia. I know that there's been a couple attempts, and probably the most recent one was some guy showed up or left some party, went back, got an AR-15, showed up, and then some lady just whips out a gun out of her purse, smokes him,
Fuck yeah,
totally murked him.
That's what.
And you know what? No one. It was just on the local news.
They just kept partying.
I figured people were a little rattled after that. But,
probably.
It
is West Virginia though.
But God, that makes you proud to be from West Virginia. That some lady just whips out a gun out of her purse and saves the day. And I think but you never hear about that. And there's no statistics tracked on like how many lives or estimated lives, or how many instances where somebody used a gun prevented.
Yeah.
And that's what I wish I really knew, because it happens more than you think.
Oh, yeah. A lot.
It happens a lot more than probably even like some like mass. I don't know. It'd be interesting. I wish I knew that number. I wish that there was a good number, because a lot of people don't know about that. that happened in West Virginia, but it was like it was barely on the local news.
Yeah.
It was just passed over.
I know. So I remember when I was in Kansas, before me and my wife started dating, and I lived in this little duplex. So it was a over-under duplex, and so I was in the bottom unit, and then a Mexican guy that I worked with, Adrian, was in the top unit, and he had just started dating this gal that worked at the bank. Really cute gal, had a kid, and so they started dating, and the ex was not happy about it, and he was a Mexican guy. I don't know if he was. It's hard to call him a thug because this was Syracuse, Kansas. We don't really have any gangs, but this will get called racist or whatever. But like the Mexican communities, they're pretty stabby. They like to fight. Like they get pretty stabby, and
hot-blooded. We'll say
a little hot-blooded.
Yeah.
But anyway, like he was not happy that Adrian was dating his ex, and he would like. There was several times where he would come by like late at like 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, and like rev his engine, yell some shit, and then like after like the second or third night in a row, and Adrian didn't do shit. He's not like he wasn't a bitch or anything, but he's like I'm not even gonna acknowledge it. But like after the like second or third, and I'm a heavy sleeper. I like not much wakes me up, but it's like 2 or 3 nights in a row this happened. And so I just walked out on the porch with my pistol, and I was like, shut the fuck up and leave us alone. And he sped off. Didn't happen again. But that was like the only time I've walked out like ready to shoot somebody. And I don't know if I would have or not, but I just like, we're gonna end this shit right now.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they ever had any beef after that, but at least it wasn't outside the house,
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing for me, just being a guy who carries, a gun quite a bit and carries concealed, and, where I'm at in West Virginia, gosh, boy, it makes you respect going up to someone's door unannounced at night when you have to knock on somebody's door. I've had to do that a couple times unannounced. They didn't know I was going to knock on their door. I'm like standing in the light, like, it's me, damn. How do I make myself look at least, as minimally, not look like some sort of thief or burglar, because there's a respect there that you have to have in West Virginia, where it's like, in a lot of states for that matter, where these people have guns and they'll use them. And but with West Virginia, I think it's a relatively safe state. I think the biggest problem we have is people on drugs trying to rob, steal stuff.
Yeah.
And that
drugs and welfare. That's kind of the blight of rural America.
Yeah. And they're just always. I mean, like I told you, somebody's tried to steal our tractor.
Yeah.
My dad wouldn't hardly believe me, and then our neighbor, though, had a tractor stolen. They drove off with a tractor, and that goes on a lot in Mississippi. I realized a lot. Like what they do is they go into these big, ours was just a utility tractor, for hay. Yeah. It was like 90 horse, but in Mississippi, it's crazy how much. Like they'll go and strip the GPS system and stuff of these John Deere tractors, these big like combines and stuff in Mississippi, and steal and sell the parts or steal.
That's wild.
And that goes on a lot. A lot of people try to steal tractors and stuff down in Mississippi. It's wild.
That's crazy.
But you got to think, somebody runs off with a lot of those tractors. There's $200,000 tractor. If you run off with a combine, there's $1 million.
I bet they're not stealing the brand new ones though, because that shit, those shit, they can be tracked.
Yeah, probably, but they come in. They mainly, my understanding is mainly try to strip like GPS and stuff out of them, and the electronics out of them. So that's like kind of what they do down there. So you got to keep an eye on.
Some old boy in Kansas just found himself a deal on eBay.
Yeah,
that's probably what happens.
That stuff gets sold on eBay, and but there's a lot of it seems to be like before we kept the key in the tractor, never worried about it, but now we have to be really careful because these people are coming out trying to take everything that's not locked up and tied down.
Yeah. Huh. That's wild.
Never would have thought.
People are weird. People are weird, Dan Gibbon, but we're at 2 hours and 15 minutes. We might as well call that good. We could talk forever, but I don't know if you guys want to hear the rest of it. So, but anyway, I'm glad you stopped by, man. This has been a really fun weekend.
Matt, I gotta say, thanks for having me.
Of course.
Your family's been absolutely great, so generous. I've had a really good time.
I warned them beforehand. Don't fucking embarrass me.
Oh, the best joke was what I went into town to get some stuff. She told what you came in for the feedlot.
Oh yeah, yeah. She said, I forget what she said. She told you, but she's like, he got offended and left.
She was trying to get you going, like I got offended and left. Or something. Oh, she's a jokester for sure.
I know. I was like, what?
Oh my god!
You offended Dan? What'd you say? I was like, what'd you do?
It was probably like, I'm vegan. Would be there. I draw the line.
Oh, I'd
Coming
kick
from
her
a
out.
Meat packer. And,
I just get out.
No.
Get
no
out.
Vegans allowed.
We don't say that word around here.
Yeah. Needless to say, I wasn't offended about anything.
Well, it's a company house and it ain't much, but it's home for us, and I enjoy. It's really cool getting to put a handshake to the face and the voice and memes of people that I've met through this whole deal, and like if nothing else, like if I don't ever make any money off this podcast, I've met a lot of great people, and that. I've said it before, but like Jesus is my faith, good people is my religion. I don't subscribe to any particular religion, but I don't care your religion, your ethnicity, your background. As if you're good people, you're good people, and I like good people. I try to keep my. They always say like keep your circle small, and like I don't know. I think your inner circle probably should be pretty small, but outside of that, like I want to be around good people, and I think the more good people, the better, and that's why I like small towns. Like the people are they act a different way. They act right for the most part, yeah. And so I've always enjoyed talking with you before, but it's been really cool to sit down, share a meal, shake your hand, and just stay up late at night drinking whiskey and talking politics. I love that shit. I love that shit. So I'm glad you stopped by. It's been a real treat, man.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in. We're gonna probably go drink more whiskey and talk more politics before he has to head out on his way. But thanks for tuning in. Make sure the best way to support the show, patreon.com/Burnin Daylight. I'm gonna start. I got to figure out how to do it, but I don't know if I'll shut down the Patreon and move everything over to Substack, but I'm going to start posting on Substack as well. It's a little better, a little more user-friendly app, and then I think it's easier to get the the ad-free feed on your whether it be Spotify or Apple or whatever podcast app you use. It's a little easier through Substack. So I'm gonna work on doing that in the coming weeks or whatnot. But go check it out. For now, it's patreon.com/Burnin Daylight. Go follow all the stuff. Go check out Dan's stuff. It's what is it? Is it Mountain State Meats?
Yeah, just Mountain State Farm.
Yeah.
Those platforms and.
Yeah, go check out it. We didn't even get to talk about bison, and I was meaning to do that, but we, as per usual with the bull sessions, we go off on tangents. But I love it. Go check it out. He's doing some really cool stuff with his meat packing plant, with the bison operation, and I gotta say, I gotta ask, when are you gonna run for office in West Virginia?
I don't know.
Man, if I was there, I'd vote for you. You're a successful dude, really, really critical thinker, and I don't think I don't recommend people to run for office ever, as far as I know. But if you ever chose to do so, I would get it, and I think you'd be a good public servant. But if not, keep doing your thing. You're doing cool shit, man.
Thanks, Matt.
Yeah. So anyway, thanks everybody for tuning in. From me and Dan Gibbon, this has been Burnin Daylight. Now, move your ass. We're Burnin Daylight.
Yes, I tried to make them wait, and I appealed to their decency. Show mercy on this day. I issued them strong orders on pain of death and disarray, but in the end they would not listen, raise their lances anyway. Men of no account they were, their breeding crude and low, with not a trace of wisdom, grace, or virtue in their souls. Yet train them long and hard I did, to bend them to the crown, to act as tools of justice, follow edict handed down. Men are fighting for their homes. No father's sons, no husband's side, but foreigners on loan. Yeah, mercenary killers, career soldiers to a man, lashing out with vengeance one cannot accept or understand. Could not instill the discipline, 'twas duty to inspire, and they responded in the end to instincts of the basest kind. Now on my knee before you, here I drop my eyes in shame, albeit little consolation, take my head for I'm to blame.